Welcome to today's webinar titled Simple SAP Authorization and Identity Management. We have folks joining today from the UK, the East Coast, and the West Coast of the US. So good morning and good afternoon, based on wherever you're located. My name is Sebastian Schoofs. Today with me on the webinar as well is my colleague Martin, who's based out of Munich, Germany. Martin is our COO and is heavily involved in the development of the SAP solutions that we have at voquz. Hey, Martin.
Hey, it's Bastian. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us today.
A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. This session is being recorded. Toward the end of the session, you will receive an email with the slides and the recorded video. I would like to ask you to type questions into the chat. So throughout the presentation, we're going to keep an eye on your questions, and there'll be time toward the end of the presentation for a Q&A. And there's going to be about 30 minutes of content followed by a lab demonstration. And like I said, please feel free to use the chat facility throughout the entire presentation. With that being said, Martin, take it away.
Yeah, hello again from my side, and let me shortly introduce to you voquz. voquz Group is historically an IT services provider in the DACH area in the German-speaking countries. We're since '98 on the market and have approximately 400 employees, out of which like 250, 270 are IT consultants that we're having in projects. Out of our project experience, we started 5 years ago to market our own solutions internationally. We're very well known for our samQ license optimizer, which is one of the standard solutions out in the market worldwide. Today we have the start and introduction of SATQ, our authorization manager, and we're going to talk about this in this webinar today. And there's a smaller tool available that helps you keep your data quality for non-transactional data within SAP in order. And let's have a look at samQ just shortly, because as I said, this is our product which we're famous for worldwide, and it's an in-house developed software asset management solution where we do cost optimization and automatic user classification for SAP users. We optimized already more than 20,000 SAP systems. And usually what we see there is that our customers have a very, very quick ROI, and more than 50% of our customers achieve savings within the year of purchase samQ. We would recommended by Gartner as an expert for indirect access, and we're in contact with a lot of regional user groups. And the next presentation that we're having there is the German user group meeting, and after this, we're presenting in November with the Mexican SAP user group our solutions. So why, when we are famous for samQ license optimizer for SAP, why did we decide to go for user management? So where is the connection to user management, and why did we make that step? You know, in the last years, it was the common audit standard for the last, let's say, 20 years in SAP, that when SAP came for an unfriendly audit, that they were checking out users based on what they did, and they decided whether their customers assigned the right license key to them. And around 2012, they were changing the language already in the contracts. By then, already the contract said you need to assign the license based on the authorizations. But still, up to basically this year, all audits have been performed still on actual transactions performed, so on actual usage. And of course, if you assign the licenses based on actual usage, that is the best optimized result that you can get, because authorizations can be wider than what you actually do. But this year, they announced also publicly that they will change the audit practice. And as they were already changing for the last 6 years, the contracts, this allows them now for really going after the customers. For a lot of customers, that is a big surprise, and we know some of the customers that would basically need now a professional SAP license for all of their users, because what is checked is the role assignments for segregation of duty issues, for compliance issues. But whether there is or whether there is not a uncritical transaction authorized that allows you to create something but will make you a professional, nobody is right now checking for that. And so that's a really big risk of exploding or ballooning costs for SAP licensing. And because we've seen that trend already, we prepared for this, and now we're introducing samQ. samQ is a fully integrated and fully automated authorization suite. It comes modular. We're doing it together with a partner, so it's already live with more than 200 customers worldwide, and we're going to see some of the logos there. And so it's a well-proven modular suite, and we're going to introduce you all the modules today, and you see how it works. But before we go there are 10, let's say, golden rules for user management that you might want to keep in mind while we run through the presentation, and always counter check with whether this fulfills what you see what the tool does. The first thing is an easy thing, right? If you are in user management, eliminate the ones that are inactive. And that's not only true for SAP, that's a standard all across. We're doing this already with samQ, because whoever is inactive, you don't need to pay for if you do it correctly. But also here, that's the main thing. Within SAP, especially, look what your developers are doing. Monitor closely what they're doing, because they usually get very, very wide entitlements, and not only in the dev systems, also in the production systems. Usually they're getting it around the time of implementation and go live. Have a close look what they do. A big security risk there. And if you want to have a close look on what's sensitive to you, understand that you cannot monitor everything that is out there. Try to keep an eye on what is important for you. Define what is important for you, what's important for your business model, what's important for your processes, what's important for you, the industry you're in, and the compliance rules that are applying there. It's different in banking than in manufacturing, different than in e-commerce, and whatever it might be. But define what is critical for you and monitor this very, very closely, because you cannot monitor everything. If you look at how the user entitlement works and how many users some customers have, we just had a customer with more than 1 million users on one system live. It's very vital that you avoid errors when you apply new roles to those. And how do you avoid errors? You eliminate the human error factor in it, so automate processes to avoid errors. Power user concept, I know it's widely used. It should replace support. It should get support costs down, have a close touch to the actual workload, and have experts in what they do. And a lot of companies do that. They set up power users with basically with SAP all entitlements. It's not good. Those people are very, very often entitled to do things, and they can do things by mistake. It's not a good practice. Maybe it's an easy thing to do, but it's definitely not a best practice that you should do. Another one that creates big headaches, but it's very important in times of GDPR. It's basically, the principle: give everything only what he needs, get only the right entitlements to everyone, and limit the entitlements to the very necessary one. That gives you a lot of headaches, because if you want to right tailor it, you end up with a lot of roles that you have to spread out. And in a emergency situation where somebody's not showing up, but he has the right entitlements to do certain thing and no one else has it, you also need to have the right process in place that you can handle those situations. But it's a definitive requirement for things like GDPR, that no one should get more than what you really needs. For your auditors, also for, you want to know when something happens, who it was, record every decision. Make sure that everything is documented in the right shape or form, and every decision to anyway entitle someone, even if you see a segregation of duty issue, record every decision and the reason why you did that. Set up an efficient process that supports the decision makers. Decision makers are no technical people. The decision makers should be the business owners of a process, and you need to give them tools that they understand and make their life easy and not complicated, because you're going to lose them and they just give it away. If you don't have an efficient process that they understand, they won't think about it and just sign off on everything because they just don't understand what they see there, right? Recheck your authorizations. In some industries, this is a requirement. In banking and some areas of banks, you need to have every quarter recertification process running. But it's definitively a good practice or best practice for everyone to do recertifications. And after all, we also say this in licensing, we say this now also in authorization management: be active and not reactive. Don't wait until the security breach is there. Don't wait until you have somebody in Europe coming after you because of GDPR breaches, and the cost for this for mitigations are much higher than if you're active from the beginning on, because that is a topic that you cannot avoid for long. You can just neglect it for a while, but then you will get caught and the cost will be much higher if you only start then caring about those issues. Okay, so keep that in mind and see how the samQ, the suite that we're introducing to you today, will help you to comply with those 10 golden rules. Sebastian.
Martin, thank you for that introduction. I see a couple of samQ customers dialed in today. I want to thank you especially for joining us. You will see that the approach that we've taken for SetQ is very similar to samQ in that the application itself is built in ABAP. It's running in its own namespace. And some of the golden rules that we've just looked at, you'll see woven throughout the content that I'll present to you right now. So I definitely want to focus on sensitive processes, and then this idea of giving users as much access as is needed, but as little as possible. So what is our approach to license management versus authorization management? At the core of all of this is the idea of centrally managing your authorizations. And we're going to walk you through the different modules of SetQ today under 4 different topic areas, starting with how to simplify the management of roles and authorizations. So how does an application like SetQ help you here? The idea obviously is to simplify the assignment process of the actual roles and authorizations to your user base. We want to do that in some sort of centralized fashion. And ultimately, the IT leadership is probably interested in reducing the costs and efforts associated with that authorization management. So as Martin said, there's different modules that can be picked and chosen for SetQ. And I want to focus during this segment of the presentation on the role manager. So we're going to look at that in detail. At the same time, oops, I think I just skipped forward. Give me one sec. At the same time, there's different modules such as the reduction manager that can automatically help you strip away access, as it's often called. So this typical example of a historically grown role model where there's thousands of transactions in specific roles. Martin was telling me we're just doing a project with a samQ customer who has 40,000 SAP users, and along with that 40,000 SAP roles. Hopefully your environment is not looking quite as bad, but with SAP, there's typically some growth of the role design that just comes with using a piece of software for decades. The extension manager can automatically help you suggest additional access that is needed for your users to perform their job duties. And then all of this is based on what we call the role reference manager. So the SetQ software itself comes with predefined reference roles, not just for jobs and roles, but also for SOD conflicts that really will simplify the process of putting together new roles and updating your existing role design. Right, let's look at the role manager. So all of you, I assume, have an existing authorization concept, except maybe you're starting with SAP and you're looking at how to build a best practice role design. But assuming that you are an existing SAP customer with maybe an outdated authorization concept, the idea of SetQ is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we can take your existing role concept, have it automatically traced by SetQ, and then start the optimization process within the SetQ application. So centrally from SetQ, you can manage all the roles, the users, and then the process of pushing new roles into the connected satellite systems, initially starting that in somewhat of a sandbox mode where you can start building your new role design. And then once you're ready to go live, everything will be managed with SetQ moving forward from one central system, either through the SAP GUI or through a web management component. And all of this, whatever you change, is documented and versioned so that you have an audit trail and you can go back to any of the changes and even roll them back if needed. What's this new process of generating roles using SetQ? So typically you want to start by identifying certain process steps, and then the two critical components really are what is the function that you want a user to be able to access and where is that functionality taking place. Within SetQ, we can define an unlimited amount of org elements, so we can declare new org elements outside of the pre-existing ones in SAP. And then we're going to fuse that into what we think of as roles that ultimately will become job positions or workplaces for your entire system landscape. So here's a quick overview of what that could look like. On the left, you have the functions. At the top, you have different packages, which could be locations, finance in Germany, in the US. And then this combination below actually shows you the different generated roles that you can then push out in a very fast and effective way to all of your managed SAP systems. As you're doing all of the management in the SetQ software, you will see in real time SOD conflicts before it's being pushed and applied to the systems. We can also do an authorization check as we're creating these new roles. So in this example, we have the original user that has a set of authorizations that person was able to execute. And you can see that comparing this to the new role design with our new reference user, there's certain elements that perform okay during the check. We're going to keep those. There's a couple that do not get applied that are supposed to be maybe not even no longer required. And you can monitor those findings before you make any changes and push these to the systems. So what are some of the highlights of role management? We can administer everything centrally, and this applies to all SAP roles after you've migrated your existing role model into the SetQ application. There's documentation and versioning that's fully automatic, and we can do all of this sometimes in a few minutes if you want to change the packages or org structures rather than spending hours on complicated changes. We also support the standard SAP PFCG view, and it makes it very simple to roll out mass changes by using a predefined role concept and also managing all of the SAP systems from one central dashboard. Martin, can you tell us a little bit about the topic of ensuring compliance?
Yeah, sure. So now that we have all the roles set, what's important is, compliance comes into play when you combine more than one role on people. And this is what we're looking at right now in our compliance modules. So what we're going to look at is, maximize audit compliance, have a look at GDPR, and also at your data. It should be your, one of your nearest, dearest interest is to keep your data protected from whatever. So we're going to look at the segregation of duties and everything else that's for GRC. And we want to show you how you can use that during your SAP audits or your audits of your SAP system from your auditor for your books. And of course, if you have your roles and entitlements under control and have everyone who's not anymore active under control and inactivated, you have a far better protection from cybersecurity and frauds. And also, if you think about, if you only give everyone what he really needs, so if we go back to that model, if if you have an accountant in the UK that is able to post invoices and only in the UK, and then we can go really down on the single table and the single values that you can post into the tables and see and read out of the table. Even if you get that guy's credentials, he doesn't see everything and he only sees a very, very limited amount of your system. So the better you're there to tailor those roles and the better you're there to apply those roles, the better you are. If you have a cybersecurity breach, the less you can get with one user out of the system. Okay, so now those are our modules in the compliance part of the system. First is Identity Manager. It could also be in workflow, whatever. But this here we bring roles and people together, and we make sure that not too much falls under one identity. The Compliance Manager is then more the offline check afterwards. This is for your auditor. At the end of the year, you really show him what has all happened, all the documented processes, and you can also check where you are, and we will see that in the live demo within your mitigations, what's ongoing, what's not ongoing, and that's what the compliance manager for, where the identity manager has basically online compliance checks as the compliance manager, the offline after the fact documentation. Then there's the recertification manager. This is for rechecking authorizations that you have given away to people, whether they still should stand or nothing else changed. So that's recertification. Also there, we have a reference model available for compliance checks and rules there that you can use and build on so that you have a very fast start. And you can also reference your models against this one, whether it is within best practice or without. So let's have a look at the core, which is the identity manager with the online checks. The workflow that we're looking at right now is the typical, there's an employee that comes in. The last part talks about the connectors, and we've seen them. So basically what SAP does, it picks up from either HR or AD, hey, there's someone new starting, okay? And also it picks up from the department he's starting in, gives you a lot of hints if you think about how the rules and the packages are. The packages are the locations, so the department will be a major hint for what's the right locations to pick and what's the right package for those ones. Then we put all the roles together in the middle before we spread them out to the target systems. And on that case here, we have the inline mitigation. We see this afterwards of segregation of duty conflicts and the inline check. And when we identified all the systems this has to go to and pick the right roles, then we can roll it out and document everything. And we have automated processes that you don't have to worry that if the guy starts that you just hired, he has all the necessary authorizations he needs and can be productive from, let's say, day 2, because day 1 is to show him around where the coffee machine is in the office. But that's that's basically the core. So how do we do that? We bring the target systems locations together, we bring the groups, the departments together where he's from, and that builds the identity that we're then rolling out to all the system that he needs to have access to, and we predefine this in the metrics that we set up in the role design. Okay, so basically we separating processes. The user administration will get independent of the target systems. We read out in the HR system who it is, and we give him an account and all of those things. And the target systems we tie to the place where he's using it. We tie to the packages, and we have separate people looking at that one and separate processes to make the one process not too complicated. We have automatic documentation of all changes. We have a listing of everyone who applies for what. So, and then we will see this afterwards in the live demos, that the central administrators have a live listing of what's happening in the organization, and we have the responsibilities and the competencies to decide who joins my department and what he gets. We have that in the department, and very easy to do in predefined assignment of available roles to people for that department. We're going to see that also later in the live demo. And the next thing is the compliance manager. And as I said, it's a that's the offline situation there, and its purpose is that you can, you collect all the the issues that you have, segregation of duty or compliance issues, and you have also there a separate mitigation process running, and that oversees the whole system for a centralized compliance manager. And we're also going to see that afterwards. This works like a BI tool where you can download all the documentations about your processes. Sebastian, why don't you take us through the workflows and connectors before we're going to have a look at the live demo?
That sounds good. Thanks, Martin. All right, so the third topic today is the efficient use of workflows. So what does that look like, and what does it enable you to do? So obviously, whatever we can automate will help us reduce administrative effort. And one of the core features that we also built into SetQ is a way to evaluate and assess risk. So here's some of the modules that are available within SetQ that enable more efficient workflows. One thing I want to single out initially is the web manager. I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that the entire software can be managed either through the SAP GUI or through the web management module that gives you a interface that can be accessed from any mobile device or web browser. And Martin's actually going to show you what that looks like in a couple of minutes. I will speak in more detail about the alert manager. So we're going to look at some of the features that this module enables. And then two of the other modules that we're not going to talk about in too much detail, at least today, is the emergency manager, which is comparable to the firefighter concept that you might be familiar with, and the password manager, which enables simple user self-service in order to reset passwords through a web application. Because the whole SetQ suite is modular, there are examples of some customers, for instance, that just use the password manager. It's the minority of people using the SetQ application, but I think it's one of the benefits of the modular design that really let you cherry pick what modules give you the most value in your organization. So let's look at the alert manager in more detail. We said at the beginning of the webinar that one of the golden rules was defining sensitive processes for you and then monitoring these processes on an ongoing basis. So once you've defined what's really important for you and what you want to keep an eye on because it's sensitive, we can define those rules in the alert manager, and we can have it automatically monitor changes in critical tables. So this could be, for instance, changing of bank accounts or other definitions that you can create in that alert manager. We automatically collect all of the protocols, and then based on a simple rule set, the analysis takes place and can be analyzed by you as well through a central cockpit. All of this is documented and can be approved before certain changes are applied. And an example of the actual cockpit is this. So this is the SAP GUI output. You'll see all of the rules that you've defined. The software can also help you in coming up with these rules, and everything can actually be downloaded if you prefer, for instance, to review this once a month in Excel. You can very easily extract all of the data and process it outside of the SetQ application as well. So what are some of the highlights? This enables you to do permanent monitoring of sensitive processes without putting in too much effort. We can avoid the deleting of specific change records, and we have extensive possibilities for in-depth analysis. And the rule editor that ships with the tool is capable of adapting to your needs and learning, and it includes the ability for you to set a risk level based on the requirements that you have. The fourth topic that I want to walk you through today before we look at the live demo is the technical connectors. We're not going to spend much time on this, but to give you an overview, SetQ has the ability to also pull in data from Active Directory, HANA Studio, your HR system, business intelligence, and this essentially gives us the ability to work with a more precise and larger data set and augment the values in the SetQ application based on your master record that's holding either employee information or other important data that is relevant for your role design. All right, so in summary, what are some of the SetQ advantages before we look at the demo? This is a individual SAP add-on to enable authorization and role management. I'd be curious to hear how some of you are doing it today. I imagine some of you might be using the SAP GRC tool. Some of you might be following just manual processes. The idea of SetQ is to allow you to minimize the cost and effort associated with role management. And again, at the beginning of the webinar, we had the example of a huge sort of blown up role design that's decades old, but it's just too complicated to trim the weeds and finally clean everything up. But with SetQ, we have fast usability. That means that the rollout itself of the tool can be done in weeks to a few months, so much faster than a typical GRC implementation or some of the similar tools on the market. And all of this is simple and transparent. So there's a high degree of standardization. We have more than 1,000 reference models for SOD conflicts. We have position and reference users that you can rely on to build your new role design. And all of this is created through the SetQ application and can be shown in real time if there's problems, if there's conflicts, and you can mitigate those before you actually push the changes to your life systems. So as a quick reminder, I hope that especially the samQ customers that are dialed in today can now kind of see the connection between SAP user licensing and authorization management. And as we said, there's a ever-growing bond between the two topics, which is ultimately why it was smart and wise for us to move into the authorization management space as well. It's definitely been one of those areas that most of our customers have asked about. Here's an example of some of the customers that are already using the application. This is around 200 installations that we have for SetQ already. If you've been following us, you know that we have a blog where we've been historically talking a lot about licensing changes, and we've also started a series last month to talk a little bit more about authorization design. So I would invite you to sign up if you want to stay up to date. We also have pretty regular events. As Martin said, the German user group is coming up. And then in November, we're going to be in Mexico City with the Mexican user group. But I'd say enough of all of that said, let's move over to the live demo part. So bear with me for just 1 second as I'm switching screens here. All right, so what we're going to look at is initially the web module. So like I said, SetQ can be managed through the SAP GUI and through the web browser. And initially what you see before I hand it over to Martin to explain to us in a bit more detail what we're looking at, as you log into the web interface, you're greeted by your current audit status. This is a logarithmic scale that can be defined by yourself so that we only focus on really critical issues that you want to mitigate because they're the highest priority. But Martin, why don't you walk us through the process of actually looking at certain roles and the approval process of the identity manager?
Yeah, let's have a look and get it started. So what we're going to do, we're going to apply for an employee of our department. So we are Jay Geipel, and for Dirk, we want to give him a new authorization role. So when we select him, the first one that we see is what does he already have? So what's already assigned to him? This is the upper part, the 3 roles, and then you see what's all available for him. And that's the first thing there. When we define the roles based on the packages, the location where he is, and based on the functions, and we make a matrix that is already predefined that every department head gets a idea, or it gets already predefined what he can select from, and there's not much more. So have in mind those 40,000, and if you do that right, out of those 40,000, the department head only sees just a couple with the right description, and now he knows what to do. So he's going to apply for being general ledger accountant, and we select it. As soon as you select, if you hold it there, you see on the top side, you see new audit problems 9 there appearing. That's the inline live segregation of duty or compliance check that comes in. And if we can go further now, we can click on that one and we can see what are they, and we see also criticality level, which is here all very high basically, right? Oh, but we disregarded for that example. We're going to close it, and we're applying for that role to be added anyway. But you see, you get all the information as you're doing it already for the guy in charge, for the department head, who was not a technical guy, but everything predefined. So when we apply for it anyway, then we're just going to save it, and then we see, okay, this is all there, and now we want to load basically the workflow process with it, and we give it a description. What is it what we're applying now for? We click on apply, and we say test. We can add some attachments to it, and we'll just load it up. And now we're switching sides, so now we're not anymore a functional department head. We're the administrator who has to make it happen. Now we're switching to the SAP GUI, and we're going to link it into Identity Manager there, and there we see the application that we just raised, which is there. We see the description is test, and it's not yet free. It's only an application that is there, and then we see what's the change that is there, and it needs to be approved that it can go live. We see here that there are issues, and we're going to just apply for it anyway and say it's all okay. But also there you see, so now we have the first step was documented by the department head applying, and now the second step also is going to be documented by the administrator, then really approving it. And he says all okay, and then we're done. So as we had those 9 segregation of duty or 9 compliance issues in there, this is also going to show up in our compliance module. Now that what we've seen is the identity manager at work with online and live checks. And now we go for the compliance manager, which is the collection of everything and the after the fact check, and basically a BI tool for your compliance status. And you can see there, you can see the compliance after SAP modules, packages, by risk level, by user types, by mitigation status, and we can slice and dice it however you want. You can drill down and then basically decide for, I'm going to decide for risk level high and get it downloaded to an Excel spreadsheet to work on mitigations or discuss with departments, hand it over to the auditor, whatever you want to do. So now download is completed. And that's the thing you can just give your auditor, and you see all the checks and you see mitigation status there, what's happening, right? Just to give you a very, very quick idea, very easy to use, 2 GUIs, one completely web-based, especially for, let's say, the non-technical users, a technical user interface within SAP, fully automated processes, compliance checks inline while you're applying, all processes documented, and a big compliance module that is then after the fact, or the always online check and the audit base basically for your in-house or the out of house or the external auditors. We've got questions in.
Yep. Good point. I was going to actually ask you, there's a couple of questions that came in, starting with any chance the screen is visible in English. I have to apologize. Martin is located in Germany. The entire application is multi-language, so this can obviously be set to English. For today, you have to excuse that some of the menus are actually in German. So with that out of the way, Martin, one of the questions that are coming in, how is SOD aggregated and how often is that done? Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, as I said, it's online. It starts at the moment when you apply, and before even a new role is live. When somebody fills out an application for a user For a change or a collection of roles for a new user, there's an online SOD check there. That was the list that we've seen there, and the red box appearing nine issues. And it was also online there for the guy then approving it. And then it's after the fact offline, so it's always there. It's always aggregated in background, and it's real-time aggregation of SOD.
So maybe also to add to that, to some of you who this language might be new to, we separate between this idea of online and offline. And just as Martin said, as you're making changes to your role design, you will see those conflicts in real time. So whenever you select packages or add new functions to an existing role, you will see those conflicts pop up even before you apply them or you start the request that needs to then be approved by a manager. That is the online component. And then at the same time, if you want to analyze, for instance, your existing role design at the beginning of using the SAP application, you can also find existing SOD conflicts within your old role design. But it's this idea of continuously doing online and offline that will really give you a good handle on mitigating SOD conflicts.
Okay, and there's the next question. Basically, attached to this one is how often is the rule set updated? There's a twofold answer to that question. Basically, it's up to the customer to have his individual situation under control. So if ever your business processes are changing, you're using new processes, you need to make sure that the rule set is there tied to your situation. If you purchased the compliance reference manager module, which is basically the one that gives you the sample rule sets, that gives you the sample rule sets, and I just go there to the to the big, where's the where we go here. That's a role reference manager, and we had the compliance reference manager under the compliance here. So it's basically this module here, the compliance reference module. Once you purchase this, you will get continuous updates. There's not a fixed schedule for rule updates, but it's going to be multiple times a year, 2-3 times. Usually we have an update on the rule set that we provide with the compliance reference manager.
2 more questions. Let's start with the easy one. Is this compatible with S/4HANA? Yes, it is. Next question, how is this tool different from SAP GRC? I think that's a great question. I don't know if you are currently using SAP GRC or how many of you today on the webinar are using GRC. The SAP GRC tool is a very big tool, and both from sort of a cost perspective and also from a feature perspective, and samQ is playing in that same space. So it's an alternative tool to manage some of the same aspects that GRC also enables, but it's highly specialized to provide authorization and identity management. So again, if you currently use GRC, I would definitely invite you, if you're interested in looking at the samQ approach, to have a one-on-one demo, and we can definitely show you the screen in English as well. But ultimately, it will come down to, I think, some of the strengths that samQ has, namely on all of the reference designs that we ship with the tool. So I think the GRC options are somewhat limited and don't really apply to many companies. They're a little bit too broad and too average, whereas we have a total of around 1,600 of these templates, both for SOD conflicts, for job positions, and many other components of the tool that will make it very, very easy to actually roll out the samQ application. So in summary, much more streamlined and specialized on certain areas, and easier to implement. Martin, any more questions?
Yeah, I see the question here. How is the product licensed? The product is licensed by your SAP users that it's managing, and there's a perpetual license available, and there's also a annual subscription available. And I see the firefighter concept that's under our workflows, and that's basically emergency manager that you're looking at, where you do a pre-definition of what happens in the case that someone didn't show up to work and you need to get something done, and that's this emergency manager, and that's exactly what you call the firefighter.
Quick follow-up to the GRC question that we just got from an attendee. The person said that they're currently using GRC. So the interesting thing also that we hear as feedback is that one of the samQ customers that we have that also uses GRC mentioned to us that even though it's been implemented, I think about 10 years ago, they still feel like they haven't really gotten the maximum value out of the application. So it's clunky in some of the aspects of what they want from it, specifically for their role management. But they just have had a hard time even attacking updating their role design because of the dependencies and because it's so much work to actually have a simpler way of redesigning the role management. So that's just one example of an existing GRC user. Obviously, everyone's situation is different, but like I said, please connect with us if you're interested to see a bit more in-depth comparison to your existing GRC module. Martin, I think there's another question for you.
Yeah, there's another basically towards the same thing. What's the advantages from SAP over SAP GRC? I think the main thing is if you ask customers using it and compare it to GRC, it's a way better user experience. You see, this is a tool, especially the identity manager, where you have people who are non-technical, business department heads that have to use the tool to just enable their new employees or change what employees need to do when they just need a tool that they understand, that it's easy. Same thing applies to the recertification piece. If you have to check in certain areas of a bank every quarter whether all entitlements giving are still there or need to be there, that's a big burden to do. So you need something that is easy, understandable, and easy to use. And there is definitely the biggest advantage that we're having. And with the reference model concept that we have for both roles and compliance, and the way it's implemented, you just get really good results much faster, and implemented at maybe a fraction of time, maybe only half of the days you need to spend. So it's going to be a cheaper, better to handle, less risky project because you can control it better. You need less days to implement.
And then maybe to add to that as a last thought, SetQ is modular, right? So obviously, if you want all of the modules, you can implement those, but you can also cherry pick, whereas the GRC tool might have functionality that you don't really require. Any more questions?
Yeah, before we wait another second for more questions, and you can also combine. Of course, you can have maybe, if you want, the compliance checks and everything within GRC, but using the identity manager as the tool that you give out to your folks to apply for new roles. So, and that's also the advantage of the modular concept. Completely up to you. If you have a GRC running and you see a weakness in the workflow that's there, just go for it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Martin. All right, you've asked some great questions. I'll give you just another sec to type more into the chat in case you have other questions. Otherwise, maybe in closing, I do appreciate that you've joined us today for the beginning of a new series of webinars specifically about authorization, identity, and role management. Stay up to date by following our blog. There will be regular updates in this new webinar series. Martin, I'll just hand it over to you to close us out while I keep just an eye on the chat if anything else comes in. But I think we've answered the majority of people's questions today.
Yeah, just keep in mind, because we see a lot of questions about how doesn't that compare to, samQ is easily available with a demo version that you can have from us, or we can do individual webinars where we can really go in details and compare then, and it's not like a high-level discussion like in one of these webinars. It's also available like our samQ for a POC. And just talk to us. We're going to reach out for you. We send the materials of the webinar out to you, and if you're interested, just reply, and we would appreciate definitely
I think
to go
Martin's
for an
microphone might have
in-depth
cut out.
comparison, whatever what the advantages or disadvantages are, or that we can fill some holes.
Perfect.
Sorry?
I don't know if it was me or you, but you cut out for a second, but we can hear you again.
Okay. But I guess that's it for today. So if you're interested, reach out to us for demos, and thanks very much for listening in so long.
Thanks for your time. Take care.